In this video, I want to talk a little bit about variables. A variable is a storage area in RAM, and it's used to hold data for processing that will take place very, very shortly. So a variable is a storage area in RAM. Variables have names that we use to refer to that storage area in RAM, to that place in RAM. And when you name a variable, you should always be descriptive. You should use lowercase characters, except for the first letter of second and subsequent names in the variable, like, here's num sold, capital S. Items ordered, a capital O. So be descriptive and use lowercase letters except for the first letter of second and subsequent names that make up the variable name. And we should have no spaces in a variable name. In many languages, you need to create or to use a data type that will describe the type of data that the variable can hold. So a data type, let's take a look. So here I have a whole bunch of RAM up here, and I have an example here of a program that creates a variable called num1 of type byte. So byte would be the data type, and num1 would be the name of the variable, the name of the storage area in RAM. Now, we were talking about Java, okay, which is a programming language. Java has some different data types that we can use to store whole numbers. Like byte num1 is 1 byte big. Num1 would be 1 byte big, so imagine a place in RAM right here, 1 byte big. And it has a range of -128 through 0 to +127. It can't hold anything smaller than -128 or larger than +127. If I said short num2, you could have a place in RAM 2 bytes big, and it would hold a whole number, and its range would be -32,768 through 0 to +32,767. If I were to say int num3, int would be the data type, num3 would be the name of the storage area. That would be 4 bytes big. It can only hold a whole number, and its range would be approximately -2 billion to +2 billion. Now, what happens if I want to store numbers that have decimal points? Well, I could use a float. So float num4. Num4 would be 4 bytes big, okay, and it could store a value that has a decimal point. What about double num5? Well, num5 would be actually 8 bytes big. 8 bytes big, and it can store a number with a decimal point, and that number would be a lot smaller or a lot larger than what a float can store. And I'll talk more about these things later on. I'm just trying to introduce you to these things called data types. So float's the data type, num4 would be the variable name, double's the data type, num5 would be the variable name. What happens if I want to store a character, a single character like someone's middle initial? I would say char letter. Letter is the name of the variable, and char is the data type. So 1 byte big, it's called letter, and it can hold characters. In the old days, in C++, we used to have character arrays. That would be 50 characters big. 50 characters big in RAM, and it would hold up to 49 characters because one of those characters would have to be reserved for what we call the null terminator. And now if you were programming in C++, you would actually use the string data type, and that would define name, which would be your storage area. So the point of this is to introduce you to different data types that exist in many programming languages, and you have to use a data type to define what kind of data that the variable can hold.